All right, before Tulane, Oklahoma comes back on, I want to do a video talking about the top draft prospects we'll get to see in this upcoming matchup between Alabama and Miami. Now, this game comes on at 3:30 on ABC. It's going to be fantastic. There's a lot of talent here, primarily on the Alabama side, I'm going to admit it, but Miami also has a bunch of players I think we need to keep an eye on. Maybe not a ton of day one picks, but definitely a lot of guys who can go later in the draft as well. Before we get into Alabama, I just want to mention some guys. Bryce Young, sophomore quarterback, there's a lot of high expectations for him in that offense, as well as sophomore linebacker Will Anderson Jr. is projected to be one of the next best guys in the country going forward. Maybe even a top 10 guy in the country next year in just terms of being a great college football player. And sophomore defensive back Malachi Moore plays that star role. Those are three sophomores for Alabama. I think we'll get a lot of looks for the 2023 NFL draft. But for 2022, it starts with John Metchie, the third at wide receiver. Alabama's a wide receiver pipeline. That's not going to change this year. Some projections for him are a little up and down. I've seen some people have him as wide receiver 1. I've seen people have him like wide receiver 5. There's a wide range of potential outcomes for him so far. I think that's going to come down a lot to how he connects with Bryce Young and the offense. Running back Brian Robinson Jr., another running, like Alabama produces running backs and wide receivers left and right, even though you could say that basically about any position for them at this point. Brian Robinson Jr. is a solid running back. He's nothing fantastic. It's not going to be like Najee Harris, obviously, but he comes out, produces consistently every year, good averages, just someone to keep an eye on. Probably will be a day 3 selection, but a good value pickup. Jahleel Billingsley at tight end. A lot of people thought this guy would be the best tight end in the country this year, or best tight end for the 2022 NFL draft. But Nick Saban doesn't seem too into the idea of featuring him so much in the offense right now. So he's still a very talented player, but we don't expect to see him as much as maybe we anticipated we would going into the 2021 season. Evan Neal at left tackle right now. Now, where he'll play in the NFL is still up in the air, which tackle position he'll start at. I think most people still envision him as maybe a right tackle, not necessarily a pure left tackle. But he's up there. This guy is projected right now to be a top 10 pick in the upcoming draft. People are not sold on him as a top 10 prospect necessarily. He's just projected to go there for now. Still has a lot to prove, but certainly has the ceiling of a top 10 player in the 2022 NFL draft. Redshirt junior right guard, redshirt senior center, Emil Ekiyor Jr., I believe, is the right guard, and Chris Owens at center. That's much easier to say that name. Those two guys are also on the radar. Not to the level of Evan Neal, obviously. I don't think they're going to be first-round picks, but they're still on the radar. Guys who should pay attention to throughout the year, who can definitely move up in the draft rankings as the season goes on. Senior edge rusher / interior defensive lineman LaBryan has been on the radar for a couple years now. Last year, he was mentioned in some draft conversations, just decided not to come out. He went back for another year. He's in his senior season, so this is it for him. We'll get to see where he goes in the upcoming draft. He's just a very solid defensive player. Nothing outstanding, just good enough that he'll be in the draft, certainly probably be a mid-round selection and contribute in his rookie year. Just won't be a phenomenal player. Will probably never be a superstar in the NFL, but just one of those consistent players that comes in and makes an impact year in and year out. Redshirt senior defensive lineman. Oh boy, this is going to be a tough one to say. Phidarian Mathis. There you go. I think I got that right. He's also on the radar. Not someone who I saw a lot about last year. More based on projections this year coming in and believe that he's going to play better than he did in the past season. He had 5 tackles for loss and 1.5 sacks last year. Certainly has the body type at 6'4", 312. Has the physicality to survive inside. It's just be a question of can he up that production to the point that we're going to be seeing a noticeable increase in his draft stock where he'll actually become an impact player in the NFL in the 2022 season. Linebackers, there are 2 of them, besides, actually 3 of them, I guess you could technically say, besides Will Anderson Jr., who again is that outstanding sophomore. The one that everyone's paying attention to is Christian Harris, that's junior linebacker. There's a really good chance he's the top linebacker in this coming year's draft. There's also Henry To'oTo'o. He's a transfer from Tennessee this year, so it's his first year at Alabama. There are high expectations for him as well. This is a guy I think ESPN had ranked as the 3rd best linebacker in the country this year. And that's regarding every player in the country, not just draft eligible players, all players in general. So there are a lot of high expectations for this dude coming from Tennessee to an Alabama. Obviously, a huge step up in the program. And we'll definitely have a lot of eyes on him this year to maybe improve his draft stock. And the other linebacker I want to talk about, the other quasi-linebacker I want to talk about is Christopher Allen, who also plays a little bit on the edge. So he gets a little bit of a, what am I trying to think about? There's a role in the NFL, it's kind of like just a pure blitzing role necessarily, where you go in and you're a rush line, that's what I'm thinking, rush linebacker. I think he could play in that role. He's about 6'4", 252, 13 tackles for loss and 6 sacks this past year. I think you could see him more as a rush linebacker in the NFL. I don't know if he has the change the direction and speed necessarily to play as a pure off-ball linebacker. Maybe you play him as an outside linebacker, though. He's got 250-pound frame, 6'4". So you could definitely probably play him actually on the outside as an outside linebacker in the edge position. Senior cornerback Josh Jobe. I think everyone knows about him at this point. This guy's going to be a borderline first-round pick. He's a good player. He just has to step it up a little bit. I think he's got the talent to go in the first round. But I think it's more likely we see Jordan Battle, junior safety for Alabama, that actually gets to go in the first round. This safety class this year is loaded, whether it's Brandon Joseph, Kyle Hamilton, Jordan Battle certainly up there. Those guys are all going to be highly drafted players. And this is a big difference from past drafts because we had very few safeties go out and dominate and go in the first round in recent years. I actually don't think we had a safety go in the first round in 2020 or 2019. But this is a chance for that really to change around this year. We could see, I think, up to 4 safeties go in the first round this season or next year's draft. Moving on to Miami. Of course, we have to start with D'Eriq King, the Houston transfer quarterback. This is his second year, I believe, at Miami. So he's a very good quarterback, obviously, for college. A very dynamic player. Everyone knows about him from his breakout season at Houston. It feels like he's been in college football forever, to be honest. How old is he, actually? Let me look at how old D'Eriq King's right now, because I know he's getting up there for a college player. He is 24 years old already. Yeah, he recently turned 24 in late August. So this is going to be his second year at Miami at this point, and his 6th year in college football. So he's getting up there in terms of experience. He's likely tapped out in that case of development, at least at the college level. You don't think you're going to get much more from this guy, considering the number of reps he's had at the college level at this point in his career. Again, a very good college quarterback, very dynamic. Lots of things to like about him at this level. I think he'll get drafted. I believe that he will get drafted because he's an impact player and he's a great athlete. I just don't know if he's going to be the kind of guy that's going to get drafted highly in the NFL or be highly coveted because there are some limitations there. And again, we know who he is at this point. There's not really much in terms of projecting for growth at the NFL level because he's been in college football for so long. Charleston Rambo, wide receiver, transfer from Oklahoma to Miami. It's his first year at Miami. Had about 743 receiving yards in 2019. People were taking a little bit of a step back in the offense this past year. Expecting to be featured more in Miami, so he's going to get more chances, more opportunities to make an impact. And I don't know where he'll go in the draft. I'm not going to lie. This guy is not on the radar as a top-level wide receiver, certainly. But he'll go somewhere, I believe, in the rankings if he just gets to be that feature wide receiver in this Miami offense. Cameron Harris is a running back I think could go really anywhere between round 4 to maybe undrafted at this point. He's been at Miami for 2 years now. Stepping into an increased role this year in 2021. And we'll see what he can do. I know some people out there who really like Cameron Harris. I'm not on the same level as them. I'm not a huge fan of him. I think he's still a solid college running back, but I just prefer guys like Kyron Williams. I prefer guys like Isaiah Spiller, Breece Hall. I don't think he's in that conversation, but he's still a good running back. Will Mallory, a tight end from Miami, stepping into probably more targets this year now that Brevin Jordan's in the NFL. Had 329 receiving yards this past year and 4 touchdowns, so I expect those numbers to go up significantly this season. But the guy everyone really wants to watch on this offense is Zion Nelson, left tackle. Dude came into college football, was so undersized, just not built to be an offensive lineman. He's really worked his way up and showed me like significant improvement in every season that he's been at Miami. He's a redshirt sophomore. There's a really good chance if he goes out and plays well against Alabama, we start hearing about him being one of the 3 best tackles in this draft class and taken in the top 15. Now, if he absolutely goes out there and gets destroyed, that's an entirely different conversation. We're starting to talk more about a second-round pick, perhaps. But there is a belief that he could perform well and fight his way into the top 15 picks in this year's draft. Other Miami players to look out for. Junior defensive tackle Nesta Jade Silvera is someone we need to take a few looks at. It's up and down in terms of where he's going to go in the draft. I've seen everything from round 6 to round 3. It kind of is all over the place. It's really hard to tell with this year's interior defensive line class because there are some really talented players, but there's not a huge crop of guys at the very top. So you'll see some decent players maybe rise up the rankings just naturally as teams try to go find some interior defensive line help. And Silvera's was all right last year. 8 tackles for loss is certainly what's going to jump out to you. Only 1 sack. Again, there's a lot of players in this draft class who are going to be more of run stoppers than necessarily pass rushers from the defensive line position. I think Silvera is definitely going to be one of those guys. Who else to watch? Zach McLeod. This was a dude who almost came out this past year. A lot of people thought he would come out this past year, and people had him on draft boards in round 6 and round 7. That's probably about where he's going to go next year anyways. He played more of a linebacker role for Alabama this past year, but now there's a chance he might get more of an edge rushing position for them. Now you got guys like Quincy Roche, Gregory Rousseau. He didn't play for them last year, but was still around the program. He's no longer there. Jalen Phillips was gone. I think we could see Zach McLeod take some more pass rushing snaps. But again, probably going to be stuck in that round 6, round 7 range. Unless, of course, he has a great year, in which case maybe he goes up to 5-4. We'll see from there. Sophomore cornerback. I think this is actually like repeated sophomore year. So technically he's going to be eligible. It's like his second sophomore year. Last year, of course, could have been his sophomore season, but then you get the extra year of eligibility from the NCAA. So really, this is his third year in college football. He's eligible. Tyreek Stevenson. This is a cornerback transfer from Georgia, now at Miami. Actually, he might have been prepping to be safety at Georgia. I forget if he was prepping to be a safety or prepping to be a corner. Either way, he's now at Miami. And there were high expectations for him at Georgia stepping into a starting role in 2021. Instead, he transfers to Miami now. But again, the Bulldogs had high expectations for this dude stepping into roles that had been vacated by guys who entered the NFL draft. If Georgia is very high on him to the point they believed he could start and he transfers to Miami, another school that's done a decent job producing defensive backs in the past, I believe that this dude has some talent, obviously, and you have to keep an eye on him to see where he develops. He has plenty of time left in terms of eligibility for college football. So there's a good chance if he struggles this year, does not have as good of a season as he wants, he could just stick around for 2 more years. He doesn't have to go out into the NFL draft. I just think this is someone to keep an eye on because there is some momentum for him building to be an impact player this year for the Miami Hurricanes. And the last player I want to talk about here, so we're already at 11 minutes, Bubba Bolden. Bubba Bolden's an interesting case because he's not in that conversation of tier 1 corners, tier 1 safety, with Brandon Joseph, Kyle Hamilton, Jordan Battle. He's not in that group. I think he could be more in that group with like Tyke Smith, like that second group of safeties. People seem really mixed on Bubba Bolden, to be honest. He's a former USC player, obviously transferred to Miami a couple of years ago. He saw significant time with them this past season. People are very up and down on him, so we'll see how it turns out. He had 4 forced fumbles last year, 3 passes defense, 1 interception. It really comes down to this year. I mean, it's a great safety class, which could actually hurt Bubba Bolden because, again, he's going to be pushed down because there's so many other safeties that are going to get taken above him. Maybe he'll wait a year because he does have 1 more year of eligibility. Maybe he'll wait around and see what happens in his senior year. We'll find out. I'm looking forward to it. Bubba Bolden will be an impact player in this game against Alabama today. We'll see how it all plays out in very shortly. Time right now is almost 2:20, so we got a little bit over an hour to kick off. Have a great day, guys.